Okay, I think we are at time and we're ready to start. So I'd like to invite the OCP and iMasons team up on the stage. They will be talking about the carbon disclosure workstream. So we have Miranda Gardiner, Alex Rakow, Andrea Desimone, Ryan Cornwell, and Kellie Jensen. So I'll hand over to Miranda.
Thanks, Priya. You're like right at level here. Good morning, everyone. I hope you've gotten a little coffee, gotten here on time. I've been sharing the story of trying to just get here because of the holiday, so nice to see all of you. As we spoke about yesterday on the main stage, this is an update on where we are with our first work stream from the official OCP and iMasons partnership. A little bit of insight on the climate accord itself. Tomorrow is actually our second birthday, so there'll be some announcements on our LinkedIn and our website, so we're very excited to celebrate with all of you. As I noted, we have 250 member companies. Companies are our members, unlike the iMasons, where individuals are members. We have over 600 trillion in market cap combined from those players. It includes our 4 hyperscalers, as well as the bulk of our membership, which is colo facilities. I think it's about 92 of our members are now colo facilities. And of course, the ultimate goal is this net zero carbon for digital infrastructure. Here is a bit of who is involved on a leadership level. I am the sole full-time employee, but luckily, these folks next to me, as well as those that you see on the slide, are there to provide their insights and leadership. Our governing body is comprised of the 4 hyperscalers, as well as Digital Realty and Schneider Electric, and of course, Dean Nelson, our founder. And then our working group chairs and leadership are combined between Cumulus, Meta, Stack, Microsoft, and Schneider. And again, some of them are here today. Our 3 primary areas of focus for this goal to net zero carbon emissions: materials, equipment, and power. Probably you saw on the slide before, that's where our working groups are split up, so needless to say, we line it with that. And then, of course, our kind of core principles, which I jokingly call carbon, carbon, carbon. We are leaning into 3 and 5 here: collaboration and transparency. Big surprise, this seems to be the theme of the conference this week. I think that's about it from me. I want to be sure we get to all these experts, so I'm going to hand this over to Alex. He is our lead on our equipment working group, as well as this OCP partnership that kicked off in January. So, Alex, off to you.
Thank you, Miranda. Good morning. So I'm co-leading this along with the other folks that you'll hear from today, and one other who couldn't join us from Microsoft, who you'll hear from in absentia. I just wanted to emphasize the tremendous potential energy that we've amassed here with this collaboration. So you just heard from Miranda about the membership of the iMasons Climate Accord. I like to say casually that it's essentially everybody. Not that there isn't always room for new members to join, but pretty much everyone I talk to in our industry has already joined the iMasons Climate Accord. Everyone has committed in that way to pursue climate neutrality, net zero, to pursue what we need to do in our industry to both grow and decarbonize at the same time, which is not an easy problem to solve. So we've got everyone assembled on the iMason side, and then as we all know as OCP members, we have a tremendous community here who's interested in technical solutions, as we talked about this morning, toward directing those technical solutions to sustainability. Anyone who's been to the OCP Global Summit in San Jose knows the tremendous size of this community. So bringing those two together around this common goal of decarbonization means that we now have the stage. We have the attention of this industry in terms of how we're going to advance decarbonization. And as we'll tell you today, we're going to pursue one part of that, and it's an important part. So the problem that we're looking to solve here is how do we establish some standardization, some guidance for the industry on how we disclose embodied carbon, that is supplier to data center operator. Data center operators who've committed to climate neutrality, who have a net zero goal, need to attack not just scope 1, and scope 1 being the emissions associated that are generated inside the data center fence, scope 2, those emissions associated with purchased power, but scope 3 as well, which is this big everything else category, which is made up largely of upstream embodied carbon. A lot of data center operators already have robust renewable power purchasing programs, especially our IGs, and they find that the vast majority of their carbon footprint is now scope 3. And this is a difficult problem because in tackling embodied carbon, you need to work with this vast network of suppliers, try to coordinate with all of them, and figure out ways that you can get them to agree to decarbonize at a pace that will match what the data center operator needs to accomplish in order to meet their own sustainability goals. Many of those suppliers have their own sustainability goals, so it's worth it for us to make sure that we're coordinating the best that we can. So we came together with all of that in mind, with the mission of recruiting more suppliers to take part in carbon disclosure, measuring and reporting on the embodied carbon of what it is that they're supplying to our industry, and figuring out what kind of guidance and standards we can put into place that will help facilitate that process. So we have three sort of sub-efforts that we can get into as we hear from the other co-leads of this program. One is to survey existing standards and other efforts. So we're not the only ones to have noticed this challenge in terms of embodied carbon standardization. There are lots of other folks that are imagining what this could look like, working on carbon labels. We heard from Rob Lossenshanks yesterday on the main stage, whose company Moog has Origin Mark, which is a carbon label. We've recently been working with the EPA, who's working on developing an embodied carbon label for suppliers to the federal government of especially high carbon materials like concrete and steel. So we're bringing these folks in as participants in this program to make sure that we're not doing anything redundant. We want to be additive with other efforts and make sure that we're all moving in the same direction and helping each other. So it's great to have folks like EPA on board with us to help advise on what they're doing, and we're also helping to advise them from an industry perspective on what they ought to do. The second is to define the disclosure format. So in October at the Global Summit, our goal is to release a draft of what we're calling a form, basically, a form to fill out as a supplier to the data center industry that says, this is the embodied carbon number for the solution I'm providing, this is how I arrived at it, and we'll have more to share on that soon so that we can all have some input on that, but we want to define the other fields that belong there. We had a great collaborative session as part of this OCP Summit yesterday on this topic. And then the third is to advance comparability. So the thing that makes this so difficult is that if one company is arriving at an embodied carbon number by one method and another company is doing the same by another method, those results that they come up with are not going to be comparable apples to apples. Even if they're both doing a life cycle analysis and developing an EPD, you could still have enough variability that you can't do the comparison that would facilitate basic procurement on that data, or adding it up to arrive at the full carbon, embodied carbon of a data center design. So we don't want to let the comparability problem stop us from recruiting more suppliers to disclose, but we do want to see what can we do from where we are as volunteers here to advance comparability, to start to attack that problem through our disclosure. And with that, I am happy to leave the rest of the time for you to hear from the other co-leads of this project. Maybe, guys, if you came over here.
Yeah, or we have the microphone.
Okay, oh yeah, that would be good.
You want to do that?
So
Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
No, go ahead.
Question, you have to ask the question.
Kellie Jensen leads data center sustainability for Meta. And I'm going to ask you, just off the cuff, this just came to me. Why is Meta investing your time in this effort?
Yeah, so I'm Kellie Jensen, and I'm responsible for a portion of Meta's Scope 3 emissions. So Scope 3 represents about 99% of Meta's emissions, and I own a decent percentage of those. And so I work with our suppliers to develop action plans to meeting our shared commitment. And today we face an absence of data, a lack of transparency, a variance in methodologies, all of which lead to bad assumptions and potentially misguided efforts. At the very least, it's inefficient. And frankly, I think we're all feeling we don't have the luxury of time, whether it's our company commitments, regulations, or our own personal passion to working towards climate change. I mean, we hear from scientists every day. So this work that we're doing, that Alex just outlined, it addresses some of these challenges, specifically transparency, and it's going to be an iterative process. We had some great working group sessions, and it will be through your feedback, your guidance, your support that we will continue to iterate on this process and improve and have more accurate data that will contribute to more detailed action plans to meet our commitments, a lack of or improved transparency, and the standardization in the methodologies that we're reporting, all of which will make our commitments more clear, more achievable, and will help to leading to a more effective timeline.
Thank you, Kellie. Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself, and then I will ask you the question that just came to me again. What role does supplier engagement play in Google's sustainability plans?
Well, first of all, Ryan Cornwell. I'm a TPM at Google Data Centers. And to your question, we fully recognize that we cannot achieve our sustainability goals in isolation. Right? We know that our suppliers play a critical impact in our overall they play a critical role in our overall environmental impact. So we work very closely with our suppliers to set ambitious reduction targets. We help them with everything from increasing energy efficiency to securing renewable energy. And I really think it's the collaboration and the direct partnership that's really essential to driving meaningful change. And then, of course, it's initiatives like this one focused on carbon disclosure that are so vital to the process. These initiatives are going to give us the data we need to better focus our engagement efforts with our suppliers, ultimately so they can be successful at achieving their goals, and we can monitor our progress over time. The last thing I'll say is we definitely support the development of an industry standard for carbon disclosure. The common framework will give us the transparency we need and ultimately benefit the entire industry.
Thank you, Ryan. And Andrea, I'll let you introduce yourself as well, and then I'll ask, why do data center vendors want reporting standardization? So
Sure.
from the perspective of a vendor.
So my name is Andrea Desimone. I'm a Sustainability Solution Manager at Schneider Electric, working with our data center customers to really match what their sustainability goals and imperatives are with what Schneider Electric can offer. Because we have sustainability goals on our side as well. And I think, when we think about why this standardization is important, Schneider has invested a lot of resources, expertise, people into measuring the environmental impacts of our offers, of our solutions. We're also investing a lot of those same resources in eco-designing, trying to reduce that environmental impact. And when we present that kind of data and those roadmaps to our customers, we want it to make sense. We want it to be actionable. We want the confusion to be lifted a bit and for it to open up those collaborative conversations that we have. I think, the other point to make too, I had one, I'm trying to think of it, is that, we're all trying to solve the same problem. And I think Ryan and Kellie both said that as well. And a rising tide really lifts all boats. If Schneider Electric or any other vendor is not gonna solve our own piece of the emissions pie on our own. Our customers need to be in on it, our competitors need to be in on it, our suppliers need to be in on it. And so this is a good way to push forward that effort.
Thank you, Andrea. And to you, Miranda. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We'll go to Lali first. So our friend and colleague, Lali Joshi from Microsoft, is unable to join us here, but we do have a question for him, and he sent us an answer, which Ryan will read for us. So we're asking Lali, how would Microsoft make use of a more complete set of embodied carbon data once that's available from suppliers?
Okay, I'll do my best for the elite here. As Microsoft moves towards its 2030 sustainability goals, our sustainability initiatives are of prime importance. Carbon emission data from vendors can help us strengthen, refine, and speed up these initiatives throughout our supply chain. It will validate and enhance our in-house efforts to fulfill our commitments to carbon positivity and a more sustainable future. In the long run, such carbon transparency can help Microsoft and the data center industry build a healthy feedback loop for making further carbon improvements.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks, Lalit. Now to Miranda. So we started with Miranda describing the iMasons Climate Accord and the tremendous energy there is behind it. So from your perspective, Miranda, what does the ICA see as the value added for the collaboration with the Open Compute Project? Yes.
Thanks, Alex. So Alex talked about how many companies and members that we've got in the ICA, and then, of course, how many are in the Open Compute Project. for us, we're now seeing companies that haven't been engaged in either or are in these various other groups, DCA, for example. So our colleagues from Coefficient are here. We had a session with them earlier this year talking about what's going on in the federal government. Lawrence Berkeley Lab was present for that. We've had reach out now from Dell, from Salesforce, you name it. Everyone wants to come to the table to talk about this. It's not just those of us in the room. So one is, that increased participation. Because I think we've all highlighted where that goes there. The second part is the ICA was really founded on this principle that we can do this together, that the kind of buying power that we've got, the kind of opportunities that we have when we have, a Schneider Electric here driving it from the supplier side, really marrying it up and bringing kind of the discussion, the uncomfortable dialogues, the solutions to the table, not just agreeing with each other, is part and parcel to where we're going to see this go forward. So, as I said, our second birthday is tomorrow. This is one of the foundational pillars that kicked off the Climate Accord. The second part is a piece that we're currently in review on called a maturity model. And we're looking at it through those three lenses I described before: materials, power, and equipment. And thanks to these folks up here, and again, the rest that you saw on the screen prior, we're trying to see what is level 1, what is level 2, what is level 3, 4, et cetera, as we move forward. Because, my panelist yesterday, Lauren, is part of our group. Lauren is one person in his company. That standard and that level where I'm going to ask Lauren to get to with decarbonizing what's going on with his work is very different than the ask for, say, Kellie at Meta. And we want to ensure that everyone's kind of coming along. We're not setting up barriers, but really opportunities here. And so, I like to lean into the uncomfortable conversations and the awkwardness and the kind of, sussing it out. And just from what I've heard here and what I'm seeing, I'm thrilled to be going home tomorrow and taking all of this with us, as I hope you all are too. And why we've left so much time at the end, because we want you to jump in and start asking us the questions and seeing where you fit into this kind of bigger puzzle of the solutions we need to solve for. So thanks, Alex.
Yeah, so I think we'll go over and you guys can come join us, and maybe we'll answer any questions that anyone has for us.
Okay.
Is part of the discussion on, as hardware has multiple lives, who owns the carbon? Like, as it goes from the first use to the second use, is part of the work group, like, essentially creating like a ledger of who owns the carbon at what point? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'll just...
Great question. Can you just say your name and where you're from?
Sean again with Sims.
Okay, great, thanks.
So the question was, for the sake of the recording that's going on, how do we account for the life cycle, the full life cycle and multiple lives of a piece of hardware when we're doing a carbon accounting? And a couple of notes on this. One is that we are limiting our scope for this particular project to upstream of the data center. So that is A1 through A3 in terms of emissions accounting, but essentially it's cradle to gate. That's not to say that that's the whole problem to be solved, but we want to make sure that we're biting off a mouthful that we can chew and swallow. Now, the question that you're asking is an interesting one, and it's the topic of one of the sub-work groups in the sustainability project at OCP. So I can connect you with the folks who are working on that to try to figure out if a product is recycled, where does the decrease in embodied carbon accrue? So is it just for the next life of that product? Is there some way to account for that in the current life? And there's talk around amortization of carbon over the life. Kellie, anything to add to that?
No, you covered it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, this is a very sensitive topic, especially for a lot of suppliers, specifically because, they'll have to disclose a lot of potentially proprietary information. How do you all plan to gain buy-in from the suppliers? So, we need a lot of data to make this successful, and we would need buy-in and participation. And, what sort of plans do you have to engage suppliers in that way?
Well, I can say just yesterday in our workshop that we had, we talked a lot about making sure that our suppliers have a seat at the table as we're developing. And as soon as we can, we want to get out the draft of this form that we're putting together to start getting feedback to make sure that whatever solution that we put together is something that's going to work for everyone in the entire industry.
I think
Just following up on that, as this form develops, we did discuss yesterday, is there going to be something like a box like I want to stay anonymous, or okay, I've done an LCA or have an EPD, but it's not published yet for that very reason. We know that people are concerned about what this will do for their customers or the kind of public perception of that they're not doing enough. So at the first pass of our information is really just gathering the data. How we ultimately then transcribe it and put it out in the market is going to be sensitive for this very reason, because we think the first problem is just getting the information. And what you've said and highlighted is really the concern that we've seen with the majority of members getting involved.
That's right. Any other questions?
Thanks, Jaime Comella from Compute. So this is an amazing project. First of all, it's gathering this data. But once we have all this data, I think there's also a bit of lack of a tool to work, to play with all these millions of data that we're going to get. So are you planning, probably not in this work group, but maybe in the future, maybe to incorporate some other companies that will generate this tool where we can really bring all these carbon-free, scope 3 data and be able to assess it in real time all along the project phases?
So I think right now we're not really looking at how to develop something new, but part of the efforts that we're going through is looking at concurrent projects that are happening in the field, and that also includes relevant tools that already exist. OpenLCA, EC3, any of those platforms that are already being utilized. TM65 is looking to release an embodied carbon database as well. If we can rely on other platforms or ecosystems that don't exist just within this data center world, I think it's going to be much more effective. So we'll just need to figure out how to plug in this work to those efforts. And really at the end of the day, EPDs are one of the most valuable ways that we have of measuring this. And this disclosure is really about bringing forward the information from those EPDs or the other methodologies of calculating this. So if we are figuring out a way to contribute those EPDs themselves to those outside platforms, I think that will feel successful.
Thanks.
Let me say one additional thing. So I think one of the benefits of this working group, we're thinking about supplier fatigue, reporting fatigue, and simplification of the process. So I think that's why it's so important that you have Google and Meta and Microsoft at the table having this discussion so that we have consistency in our approach and we help to reduce some of that fatigue that y'all might be feeling from reporting to each of us in addition to all of the other reporting requirements and regulatory bodies.
Hi, I'm Gerardo Lisboa. I'm from the Portuguese Open Source Business Association. And we are a non-profit that have been working with policy with the government for the last 17 years, and also with industry partners and European partners. And one of the discussion, well, it's not new probably for any of you, but most of the discussions I've been having with questions about public procurement is to have more information other than just the dollar value, but also the carbon footprint of not only the services they are buying, but also the queries or the processing they are using. And this also stems from a very delicate situation here in Portugal, where a very big new data center, which is being constructed right now, has several environmental issues. And so their carbon footprint will be asked when purchasing by, in this case, the local government. It's not something that will happen now, and not even in 1 or 2 years, because there's not enough metrics to supply this kind of decision in terms of tenders, either public or in the private sector. But I welcome this initiative very much, and I'll be working with you as soon as possible. There's also, just an add, there's a lot of talk about in AI standardization processes, a lot about the sustainability of the queries that are being done right now. And so this is also going to start appearing in the new IEEE standards in 3 to 4 years' time.
I mean, the great points. I think with any of these initiatives, we know there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. We know that there's already double counting, inaccuracy in the data. Some of the methodologies are more stringent, less stringent. Some of the opportunity that we have and that we hope, again, you'll join us for is to try and get through this and resolve it. It's not going to happen overnight. It is going to be very challenging. You know, I come from a background of building standards. You know, I used to work on LEED when you guys submitted it with binders. So, I mean, that was really challenging, right? You're looking at a piece of paper trying to determine somebody's energy model. It's very different now, 30 years down the road. Do we have that kind of timeline? No. And so, you know, again, the more that you guys can provide us this information, the more we can kind of, again, we talk about it like negotiating. Don't point the finger that somebody else isn't doing it right, but instead, what are you doing? What can you share so that you can point out, wait, it might work better in this climate zone? Or did you try using this methodology? Or what if we did this and I committed to purchasing this? I mean, that's the kind of conversation we want to keep having for that. I mean, again, for what you made in terms of the point, like it's going to be hard and there's going to be, again, lots of issues that we have to resolve. So thank you for kind of highlighting that to us because we try and keep that top of mind all the time. I think Alex wanted to say something too, and then I saw a question in the front row. No?
Great answer.
Okay.
Hi, Leslie Paniagua. I'm working with Cloudflare, and I'm actually working specifically with our vendors to get our Scope 3 measurement, and I have another session about this later today after lunch if you want to join me. But really what I want to ask you is, since you're already working together, I want to know, I've been gathering data from our vendors, and as you said, I couldn't agree more. It's a very diverse type of reporting, disclosure. We're all in this together. We're all doing what we can and to the best of our knowledge. But from a work group perspective, do you have any suggestions or guidelines, or do you plan to publish like a white paper that help us normalize the data that we get? Because most of us will have multiple vendors, right? So, and we will get, even though it's a transparent report and I can trust the data, it may come in different forms. So do you have any suggestions on how to get to a normalization so we can actually compare vendor A to B to C and do it fairly?
I know. I was like, we'll get back to you. No, this was part of the meeting yesterday. Is the first pass is the form, getting all the data, looking to some of our third-party consultants and trusted partners to do the analysis of it. For that, I think the kind of follow-up on that piece is get involved with us. We have biweekly calls, and we talked yesterday about increasing those calls and separating them out a little bit. So again, the kind of specificities that we need to get into are there, and that we move quickly, because October is around the corner for the Global Summit, and we want to be able to present, again, what this intake form looks like, what it is. I think our goal right now is within the next month or 6 weeks, we'll sort of have the kind of first pass at what the kind of criteria are, I think is what we talked about.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, yeah. 6 weeks to have the criteria, then develop the form, and then release it and start asking, voluntarily asking, get it to us. So again, what we can present in October, but.
And feedback.
And feedback. There we go. Thanks.
I think part of the question was data accuracy, and maybe you could address that as well.
The $2 million question, the other one? I mean, right now, I think our goal is let's get the data and then have to go from there and see where it is. I think the other thing that we keep hearing, or I keep hearing too, is that we do have customers out there who are asking for things that are not accurate. I want a 0 PUE. Like, come on. Like, we all know that that's not accurate. But, so some of it is the education informing. And then I think when we see the data back, then we can start to understand, okay, this is really skewing and going off the rails here. But unfortunately, I guess unless somebody else has an answer, part of this is going to come with the process.
I would also just say that, like, we're not really trying to invent a new way of measuring this as well. If you're developing an EPD, there are ISO standards that dictate how you can show that you've applied a certain amount of rigor to that. And so that's going to be part of the disclosure as well, making sure that those proof points are there and brought forward in a transparent way.
One last question.
Hi, I'm Nathalie Cruchet from Subma. Hello. So my question was, I understand this is like the beginning, and so it's focusing on CO2. Is there any plans in the future to include other criteria like water, biodiversity, impacts of the supply chain?
Yeah, so the iMasons Climate Accord is very much focused on carbon. And the OCP sustainability project has a wide view over different environmental impacts in the data center, including water, energy efficiency, and others. We wanted to make sure that we had a limited scope that would help us to achieve a concrete goal by October. So for this, we really are focused on upstream embodied carbon and gathering as much data as we can.
Yeah, I would just say that also we have a sustainability committee on the iMason side. Our global ED right here, Jeff Omilchek, is sitting here. He runs that. We actually have a call this afternoon. And so let's chat some more because there will be a next work stream or a third work stream or whatever. I think to Alex's point, that's when we'll start to incorporate the rest of these components because it all kind of syncs up together at the end. Thanks.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we need to move on to our next session. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all to the team.